Today, I continue with this series that looks at which players are being considered for their respective Overwatch World Cup 2019 sides, and who I think will make them in the end. I just quickly want to start with some news regarding this year's World Cup, which is that the original player registration deadline of July 14th has now been pushed back to July 25th, which this tweet from South Korea explained was in order to allow competing teams to, quote, better adapt to meta changes and hero patches. This is very intriguing, as the original deadline was meant to be at the end of the Overwatch League's third stage, but this new one is now at the beginning of stage 4, implying to me that the devs have some big changes coming during the break, perhaps lending even more credence to the 222 rumours that are supposed to be introduced into the Overwatch League for stage 4. That said, the next on the list of teams to look at, and as just a moment ago hinted, is South Korea, who are looking to win this competition for a 4th year in a row after besting China in the finals last year, and they once again are unsurprisingly heavy favourites. The committee that was voted in for Korea this year was YBT as General Manager, Lime as Community Lead, and Krusty as Coach, perhaps meaning that we'll see a couple of his players from the shop make his final 7. The team announced they would be holding trials and scrims for the side, and it's entirely possible that very talented non-Overwatch League players like QOQ, Doha, Alarm, Kaiser, and Yaki, and many more who would have been eligible might have an outside chances of making the side, unlike Sparkle, who unfortunately is still underage. But in the interest of being able to provide fair and honest opinions, given I haven't seen too much of these players play, as well as the fact that there is so much quality Overwatch League talent available, my final 7-man roster will only be made up of these players, and not those from contenders, although a very credible argument could be made that South Korea could at least send 4 different rosters and still come back as champions. As usual, let me start at the tank role, where we already start to have selection headaches of how many great options are available. But the main tank position, the 4 most realistic candidates are Mano, Bumper, Raw and Gesture. Each of these players have gained a lot of respect and recognition of their ability, but let's look at each one themselves. Beginning with Mano, we have a player who's been brilliant all season, with slightly more passive counter-attacking style, in line with the rest of his team, compared to the other 3. I think he's been able to produce high-quality performances at a most consistent rate, at times putting the Excelsior on his back, with the best example of this coming in New York's defeat to Vancouver in the Stage 2 playoffs, where he outplayed Bumper and came in clutch with a number of shatters, which is something he's continually been able to bring. Bumper meanwhile receives a large amount of flack from a select few fans for being over-aggressive in a feeder. Those with this opinion fail to recognise the impact he's having, as well as the role that's been given to him to allow the Titan to succeed. Yes, he is very aggressive, but this is in order for him to make space and create chaos for his opponents, which allows his team to focus down split-off targets and dominate. In doing this, he often takes a lot of burst damage that sometimes sees him die, but in a lot of cases this is purely for the benefit of the team, and interestingly, he doesn't actually take that much damage compared to others at this position. The best part of his game though is arguably his clutch factor. Whilst in a lot of cases he's been perceivably losing the Rhine duel against his opposite numbers, like Super and Mano, he always seems to find a way of getting the last laugh with a critical shatter and kills in overtime in the crucial teamfights. Raw started off his season slowly, as he looked to develop coordination with his teammates on the Gladiators, which saw him get caught out of position frequently in the first few weeks. Since then though, he's really developed well with a number of good displays on both Winston and Ryan that have helped his side improve, though I think it's still too early to have him really competing with either Bumper or Mano, as he's making more mistakes and having few clutch moments of his own. Lastly, Gesture is a very streaky player, and at his best, especially on Winston, he arguably matches the duo that I talked about first. But again this season, his performances have been inconsistent, and his Rhine is clearly weaker than the others, so it's unlikely he'll get the nod. Therefore, the decision really is between Mano and Bumper, although I'd have to go with Mano myself, as he's just shown himself to be a little more reliable, and the best main tank in the world in my eyes, whilst also bettering Bumper in the head-to-head, and I'd rather have more flexibility in how the team was able to play, as if Bumper was picked, you're making a conscious decision to provide a lot of aggressive support, which is when he's at his best, and we've little idea how his play would adapt if he's disappeared. Moving on to the flex tank position, and again, there are a load of great choices. It will most likely be between Choi Hyobin, Mecca, Dako, Michelle, Janu, and Fury. Looking at his development from Season 1 to 2, Choi's been one of the most improved players in the league, having done an excellent job on D.Va all round, having shown a great ability to be able to keep pressure onto his opponents, whilst also being alert to and protecting his backline with Peel. His bombs have progressively started to have a greater impact, and I'm sure Krusty would love to see him involved, but the competition for a place here is fierce. The player of the 6 I've mentioned here with the least chance though, in my opinion, is Mecca, who has declined gradually from the start of his season. Early on he was outstanding, with huge diva bombs and a consistent protection of both Mano and Jonak. Over the course of Stage 2, it was noticeable that he was starting to find himself getting caught out of position regularly, resulting in demechs at the beginning of teamfights. And he was terrible, and in my opinion one of the leading contributors to New York's 2 losses against Atlanta. It might have been this that prompted the committed approach of the Excelsior of running Sombra this stage, in which he sees little to no game time, which is why I doubt he'll be included. As for Dako, he's been the driving force behind his team's limited success, at times carrying the reign on his own. He's particularly great at pressuring opposition main tanks and getting kills on flanks, which he used to great effect against New York, which will likely see him in the conversation. Michel mainly receives his consideration for his ability when flexing on Sombra, with him probably the best at this hero of those mentioned here. His diva has also been very strong, but his Sombra has caused havoc when used, with great efficiency when using EMP, and given how important flexible divas are in the current meta, he'll definitely get a look. Janu meanwhile has been a key pillar around Bumper and the rest of Vancouver's success, with an innate ability to provide pressure on the frontline, whilst also being able to support his backline if needed. His bombs have come in clutch on a number of occasions, and he's definitely given himself a great chance of making the side. Yet to me, there can only be one choice for this position, which is Fury. Whilst London haven't always been at their best this season, Fury has consistently been extraordinary, with great displays one after another. He's gained a reputation for ultimates negated, but lately what has stood out the most has been his flexibility. In recent series, his play on Sombra and Farah has outshone his DPS teammates, as he's had a massive impact on the team's success. I couldn't name you a major flaw in his game, and as an MVP candidate for this season, and in my opinion as the best diva in the world, I'd give him a nod personally over the others. Now looking at the support position brings about another difficult and heated debate, with more top talent from which we can only choose 2. However, unlike of a tank role, I actually think that the best decision for South Korea to make would be to pick the support duo as their respective pairs from their teams. I do this as it guarantees the synergy between the pair, whilst also not conflicting styles, which perhaps could bring its own issues further down the line. By doing this, I do recognise that someone like Violet is penalised. He's been a real breakout for the Shock since coming of age, with a great ability to find picks and deal ridiculous amounts of damage. Not to mention Krusty will have the best knowledge of his ability firsthand. But aside from my decision to pick pre-made partnerships, I also have my own concerns with Violet's ultimate usage, which at times hasn't always been the most patient or efficient, as well as the fact that unlike other flex supports, he seems very reluctant to be flexible, sticking on Zen a lot of the time, whilst I think others at the position have shown a greater depth playing heroes like Ana. Also, after his incredible recent performances on Ana, people suggest that Kareev should be in the side. And whilst I take nothing away from him, I just don't think he's played enough on the role to warrant a place in the side over those who have played at a similarly high level for a longer stretch of time, although I'm sure he could get a tryout alongside others like IDK and Shu. Subsequently, I think the decision for South Korea's supports comes down to having Slime and Twilight, or Animo and Jonak. Style plays a major role in deciding this, with the Titans duo a lot more proactive in their play, with Slime looking to cause disruption on his opponent's frontline before targeting their supports, whilst Twilight himself plays very aggressively, at times almost beside his own main tank, to provide consistent support and pressure. Animo, on the other hand, prioritises a more passive approach, with his aim being to keep himself and his team alive to play around the play of Jonak, who will signal the direction of the engagement as he looks to get kills on Zen or Bionades on Ana to start out teamfights. This is a really tough choice, but personally I just lean towards Slime and Twilight, as their proactiveness can go a long way in a multitude of metas, and I'd argue on balance that Slime and Twilight have just edged out Jonak and Animo in terms of being the better support duo so far this season. This now just leaves us with the DPS position, from which I reckon 3 players will be chosen. This area is once again stacked. Just naming a few, you could have Prophet, Nene, Libero, Decay, Siomen Su, Haxel, Sabiolbi, Fleta, Carpe, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. And in all honesty, it would be impossible for me to go through every single option, as there's even players I haven't mentioned yet who could very easily have a decent shot at making the side. Not forgetting the added difficulty, which is that most of these players have been stuck in Brig Jail or Zarya Gulags, so we've only been able to see their DPS play in varying degrees, depending on the teams they play for. Therefore, I'm just going to say which 3 I'd choose, as this will be a lot quicker, and to be perfectly honest, there isn't really an answer that will satisfy everyone. The first player I pick, and the only lock in my mind, is Prophet, as his quality does not falter amongst a deep hero pool that gives the team flexibility, whilst he's shown on multiple occasions his ability to clutch and pop off as one of the best in the league, as shown by his finals MVP performance against Philly, and more recently alongside Fury as the driving forces for London this season. Rather than specifically have a designated hit scan and projectile player, I'd rather keep it all flexible, which is why I'd put Decay and Nene in beside Prophet, so that now you have a nutty DPS lineup that pretty much can cover every single hero, although let me know which trio you put in yourselves. Just recapping the team as a whole, after an arduous effort, my final 7-man roster for Team South Korea would be Mano at main tank, Fury at flex tank, Slime at main support, Twilight at flex support, and the crazy good DPS trio of Prophet, Decay, and then Nene. And with that, we reach the end of my South Korea Overwatch World Cup video, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Of course, keep telling me which teams you'd like to see. Otherwise, if you enjoyed and don't want to miss out, please like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter for this continuing competitive Overwatch coverage and content, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.